All right, welcome back, everybody. It's at MC Show Digital or the Manchild Show with Boy Green Digital. I'm the Manchild Jim Lerch. You see Paul Esden right next to me. And today's broadcast brought to you by our friends at Cam's Pizzeria, locations on Oswego and Camillus, where it is always love at first slice. Tony and his folks do a phenomenal job, and we thank them for supporting us here on our digital format. All right, without further ado, it's time to talk baseball today, and we're going to talk about the Syracuse Mets and that pipeline to the New York Mets. And joining us right now is the play-by-play voice of your Syracuse Mets. Let's welcome in for the first time digitally. We've had him many times on the radio, the one, the only Michael Tricarico, who's sitting, by the way, live in the broadcast booth. What's up, Michael?
Very
How are
nice.
you?
Yeah, I'm great. How are you guys?
We're good, man. It's cozy, being at home.
Man.
I got little Mookie over here sleeping in the corner. He doesn't miss a broadcast. I don't think he listens to anything I say, but he's here. It feels good. Boy Green, how you liking the home studio?
Yeah, I'm liking it very nice. And Michael, correct me if I'm wrong. How recent is some of it? So we see the backdrop there now in digital world. How recently did you guys update all this?
Yeah, I think this backdrop is now in its second, maybe first full season, but second year. We're trying to upgrade as much as we can. As you guys know, radio is awesome, but so many people love to actually see things in person. So all of our games are not only on the Score 1260, but also on MILB.TV and MLB.TV and the Valley Live app and all that. So we've upgraded the cameras, we've upgraded our production, we've upgraded the backdrop to, I need everything I can to try and make me look better. Jack doesn't need a whole lot of help. He's good on his own. But we're really happy with what our production team's been able to do. Big credit to them. And yeah, this is what we get. So it's awesome.
All right, Michael, let's talk some Syracuse Mets baseball. One of the things that's going on is there is a real pipeline situation going on between the Syracuse Mets and the big Mets. And that is that we are seeing some players who we didn't necessarily expect to be back in the minor leagues, working on things. Let's start with the guy that surprised me the most when he was sent down, although he was struggling in the majors. And that's the one-time number one prospect in the minor leagues who made his way to the majors last year, Francisco Alvarez. So he's back in a Syracuse Mets jersey. How are things going? What are the expectations? And what is Alvarez working on right now as a Syracuse Met?
Yeah, ultimately, I think he just needs to regain some confidence, get a hot stretch, get some timing back, and get that swing back, at least on the offensive side. Defensively, of course, this is a guy that coming up, everyone knew about the offense. He was the top prospect in all of baseball coming up because of the offense, some prodigious power. This guy, can hit 500-foot home runs. The defense was always a question mark, and then all of a sudden he gets called up sooner than he probably thought he was going to because of some injuries and whatnot. And all of a sudden, not only was the offense good, but the defense really improved up at the big league level. But now that the offense has been struggling, I think what you really find is it's very difficult for guys to be really good on offense and really good defensively when one of those is struggling. And I think for Alvy, it was, my offense is struggling. I've got to work on that. You're still trying to go through all of that pregame scouting reports. As the catcher, you got to know how you're going to attack all of the opposing batters. It's just a whole lot to take in. So not only was the offense struggling, the defense this year was struggling. And you got to remember, Francisco Alvarez spent fewer than 50 games in AAA throughout his entire career before he got called up. We saw him just a couple of years ago, thought we were going to have him for at least maybe a few weeks, a month, maybe 2 months. And it was 4 games he gets called up because of an injury at the big league level. And then he just stayed up there for the long haul. So I know there's some hesitancy in sending guys down when they've been in the majors for a couple of seasons. What is this going to do to a guy's confidence? Honestly, he's taken it in stride. It's been great to see him having fun, smiling. He's hit some home runs. I think one thing that was awesome to see more recently is one of the home runs he hit was actually to the opposite field. He's a guy who hit a couple of pull home runs to left center field, 450 feet, but for him to go the other way, I think is a really good sign of what's to come. He doesn't need to be a guy who's hitting 300, but if he can hit, 220, 230 in the big leagues and give you 25, 30 home runs, I think that's going to be more than good enough for the New York Mets. So for him, it's just a matter of regaining that confidence, getting on a hot stretch, making sure the defense is shored up. And I think he definitely needs a little bit more time, but he's on his way to getting back to that point.
Let me jump in and ask you about Luis Angel Acuna as well. Everybody knows the last name, obviously, because of his brother. He seemed to have found a little niche with the Mets. Obviously, a guy that's very swift of foot, so he's getting a lot of pinch running duties in, some defensive stints. Wasn't a regular starter up there. Is that the thought here in bringing him back down? Is to get him more swings, to get him more at bats? I mean, what have you heard in terms of why he's back down at this moment, and what are his chances of getting back up at some point this season?
Yeah, I mean, look, he's definitely a guy who he could be up in the major leagues right now. He could be that pinch runner. He could be that great defensive substitute. That's something that every major league team needs. But the Mets see more value in him, and they see a guy who can be more of an everyday type of player, or more than just the guy who comes in late as a pinch runner or a defensive replacement. So that's why he is here, to try and get the swing going. His OPS, he was really struggling. He wasn't showing much power, was having some trouble getting on base. But because of his speed, he's a guy that doesn't need to have a ton of power. He just needs to be a guy that gets on base, whether it be with walks or working counts more at the top of the order. Maybe in the big leagues, he's more of an 8-9 hitter that gets on base for the top of the order. But because of his speed, we talk all the time about how if you are a good base stealer, you're someone who could turn walks and singles into quasi doubles, because as soon as you get to first, you can steal second. And I think it just comes down to him starting to get his swing back, to a good point, getting back to not necessarily where he was when he went up to the big leagues last year. I think that surprised a lot of people when he went up and all of a sudden, the last 2 weeks of the year, he's hitting a ton of home runs, getting all these extra base hits and hitting over 300. I think he's a guy that certainly could have a high batting average. I'm not sure if he'll hit a ton of home runs, but everything that we've heard here is, again, continue to work on the defense. Playing center field, I think, is actually an underrated part about him being here in AAA. He's a guy that can play center field, but it's such an important position where you're not going to, in the major leagues, just throw a guy out there. Even if he's capable, you're not really going to throw a guy out there consistently if he hasn't played it for a long time throughout his minor league career. So a big part about Acuna being here is actually to get him some reps in center field, because that is a position of need for the New York Mets. And if you can get Acuna those reps in center field, if his offense can come along a little bit better, now he's a guy that can go up, and yes, he can play second. Yes, he can play third. He can fill in it short if he needs to, but now you could toss him in center field. Jeff McNeil can play second base. You can mix Beatty and Vientos in at third. You could have one of those guys, maybe Vientos, now DHing. It makes the major league team that much more versatile. So a big part of Acuna being here is, yes, let's get his swing back on track because he was struggling, but also let's get him some reps in center field, because once he starts to heat up, he's definitely a guy just like Alvarez, who I think you can expect to see back in the big leagues by the end of the season.
Michael, let's dive a little bit deeper into what you just said, that there are like team things that the Syracuse Mets / New York Mets, because obviously they work in tandem with decision making, that they will deploy Acuna in ways that maybe they wouldn't at the major league level, but they'd be willing to do at the AAA level, also individually, because, Syracuse Mets fans, of course, locally all want wins and things of that nature. But also, is there certain things in terms of what they're asking him to do that goes beyond just hitting the baseball and scoring runs and doing these things, that there are things that he's working on that maybe sacrifice what things he would normally be doing at the major league level? I don't know if I'm, articulating exactly what I'm saying here of trying to say, but sometimes there's things deeper than just the wins and losses that are happening on a player-to-player level of things they're being asked to do.
No, absolutely. I mean, just a quick example, because I think I get what you're going at. Like a relief pitcher, maybe in the major leagues, they would have him pitch one inning and not necessarily get into a second inning, or have a starting pitcher who's now into the sixth inning. And in the major leagues, they'd probably go to the bullpen and bring in a guy to face the next batter. But the major league team wants to see, hey, can this guy go a little deeper? Can they get this next guy out? So, yeah, I think for, someone like a Luis Angel Acuna, I think he would be capable if they had, tossed him in center field in the big leagues. But at the same time, it's one or two plays in a game that can make all the difference. And if a guy's not used to being out there, they could be one of the best defenders. But until you actually play that position at a consistent rate, there's just certain intricacies that you have to learn just by doing it. You could practice it all you want, but until you get in an actual game situation, you're just not going to understand it. So absolutely, he's already played more games Acuna has in center field than he would have in the major leagues. And that's all part of the plan. It's something they did with Ronnie Mauricio when he was working his way up, when he was a shortstop for the majority of his career. And then all of a sudden, 2 years ago, right in the middle of the season, they're like, all right, Ronnie, we want you to learn left field, and we want you to learn third base, and we want you to learn second base. And all of a sudden, then his offense started to trail off because he's trying to concentrate on now learning all these new positions, while also still trying to keep things mentally in an offensive mindset. So those things can throw you off. That's where you're here in AAA to work on those things. You might go through a slump here or there, but ultimately you want it to all come together at the right time so that when a guy gets to the major leagues, he's very comfortable defensively and it doesn't affect his offense whatsoever.
Again,
Michael,
we're speaking with the play-by-play voice of the Syracuse Mets, Michael Tricarico here. I just wanted to add one more quickie on Acuna. Like, for instance, we all compliment him on his speed and that he can steal bases and all those sorts of things. But, like, for Acuna, do they almost tell him, hey, go a little aggressive here. We want to see how far you could push it. Again, that same thing of Major League versus AAA and test that line. We know now he could do this or that. Or is it more reserved in a certain way in AAA that they don't want him doing it? They know he could just steal, so they're not asking him to do stuff like that, Michael.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not only from the team standpoint, but also from an individual standpoint. The pressure's off a little bit. You never want to get picked off, even in AAA. But I'm sure Acuna is working on, hey, can I take an extra half-step lead? Can I really time this pitcher a little bit better? I might work on those things where, okay, maybe I get picked off here at this level, but it's all trial and error. So absolutely, I think not only are there team-specific instances, but I think even on an individual level mentally, these guys are maybe doing things at this level, trying things at this level that you might not necessarily try for the first or second time up in the big leagues, but you see what you could get away with here.
Let me shift gears and walk over to a rehab that's going on right now with the Syracuse Mets, and that's Jesse Winker. Guy was, a big-time major league hitter trying to get his way back. Let's just talk a little about his performance, what you've seen so far, and how soon you expect him to get back up.
Yeah, I mean, Winker is a guy who just on Sunday hit a 2-run home run in the first inning. He was the designated hitter 2 games he played with Syracuse during the weekend, Saturday and Sunday before the off day on Monday. And I think you're probably going to see him back in the New York Mets lineup ready to go, whether it is starting as a designated hitter, whether it is coming off the bench as a left-handed bat. He provides just so many more options. He provides a major league experienced bat. I think you also cannot discount what he would mean just to the vibes, I guess you'll say, of the clubhouse. I mean, honestly, I don't think it's talked about enough just how important having the right guys in a dugout and in a clubhouse really is to a team getting back on track. I think that was a big case for the New York Mets. After their little downslope, you end up playing the Yankees at home and you take 2 out of 3 from the New York Yankees. I know they've been struggling as well, but sometimes it just takes you to get back at home and get the right guys and have that upbeat attitude. And I think Winker, he looked fine here. That 2-run home run was his only hit during the weekend, but he's the type of player that I think his timing looked good. I think he's ready to get back to the big leagues. And I think he's someone that can really help Carlos Mendoza, the New York Mets manager, just add some extra versatility to the lineup and do some more things.
All right, he's Michael Tricarico. You see Boy Green, Paul Esden Jr. I'm the Manchild, Jim Lerch. Today's broadcast brought to you by friends at Cam's Pizzeria. Appropriately, their banner popping up there right on the screen as cued. I want to talk to you about some of the pitching prospects. We'll do that after we take a quick 30-second break. We'll be right back after this word from our friends at Cam's.
When you think of Cam's Pizzeria, think about 2 of your favorites. Their zesty buffalo chicken wing pizza or their tasty chicken bacon ranch. Over 16 specialty pizzas made fresh daily with the best ingredients. Indulge in their homemade calzones, subs, wraps, salads, and their famous cannolis for dessert. They're all made with love just for you. Order online for 10% off at camspizza.com. Locations in Camillus and Oswego. Cam's Pizzeria. It's love at first slice.
All right, Michael, in the major leagues, of course, pitching matters, and Syracuse has some top pitching prospects in its starting rotation, maybe some others worth mentioning as well. I'll let you go off in any tangent you want, but let's start with Blade Tidwell and Brandon Sproat. These are 2 young pitchers, both in their early mid-20s. I think they're both 24 years old right now. How have they been progressing? I think one of them actually got sent up for a spot start, right? I think it was Tidwell.
Yeah, Tidwell went up, yeah.
Okay, so just tell us a little bit about how that pipeline, those pitchers and anyone else worth mentioning on the pitching staff is a potential here to be some sort of an impact player either for the Mets later this season or even into next season?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we'll start with Blade Tidwell because he has gone up a couple of times just here or there, whether it's out of the bullpen or making a spot start. He's looked awesome here in Syracuse. Strikeout rate's been up. His walk rate's been down. His velocity, he's been consistently hitting 97, 98, 99 with the fastball. After the first time he went up, which probably was about a month ago at this point, briefly, the biggest thing, the lesson that he came away with is I need to learn how to put away these major league batters better. He would get 2 strikes on guys, and then he would have some trouble putting those guys away. Some of those issues you saw from time to time here in AAA, but he was definitely doing a much better job racking up the strikeouts, getting ahead in counts, and then getting those put away pitches. And, I think he's gone through some of those struggles that you would expect from a guy who's going from AAA to the major leagues, where you're facing, in the major leagues, you're probably facing there's in AAA, there's 2 or 3 hitters that are really, really, really good. And then the rest are still quality batters, but it's those 2 or 3 hitters is what you're facing 1 through 9 in a major league lineup. So there really are no breaks. And, I think we've seen that from Blade with his couple of major league starts, is that he'll get through 3 or 4 innings really well and then maybe run out of steam in that 4th or 5th inning. And that's, I think, that next lesson is how can these guys increase their stamina to be able to get through 2-3 times through the order. So I think that's the last step for him. Brandon Sproat, I'll tell you, he struggled mightily at the end of last season when he first came up to AAA. He struggled at the start of this season. He was the first to tell you. He's like, look, it's been no secret. I have not been good here in AAA. And all of a sudden, over his last, I'd say, 3 starts, he has looked awesome. He has looked like the number 1 prospect in the Mets organization that so many people thought New York had coming into this year. His fastball velocity has been up. In fact, over his first 15 starts, he only had 4 fastballs that were 99 miles an hour or faster. In his 16th start alone, he had 9 pitches that were at least 99 miles per hour. Think about that. More than double the amount of 99 mile per hour or faster pitches in just 1 start that he had through the first 15 starts this season. And when we talked to Brandon, we talked to the Mets coaching staff, they said, it's just mindset. We're telling him, you just have the mindset. You have to just attack these guys, go after them, attack the strike zone, and have that essentially dog in you. Go after it. And he's really shown that. And I'm telling you, I know he's fallen back. I think MLB Pipeline had him fall out of their top 100 prospects. Maybe he's now down 4th or 5th best New York Mets prospect. I'm going to tell you right now, while he hasn't been the most consistent pitcher we've seen in Syracuse, I think he's got the highest ceiling. Honestly, I think he's the type of guy that could be a 1, 2, 3. He could be a frontline starter in the major leagues. I think it's still going to take some time. I think he's still got to get a little bit more consistent, but boy, does he have the stuff to really get guys out, I think, at the big league level. And then the last starting pitcher we'll talk about is Nolan McLean, because he's the guy that has been the most consistent starting pitcher at this level. And by me saying I think Sproat has the highest ceiling, I don't want that to take anything away from Nolan, because he has been probably the best pitcher we've seen overall from start of the season to now here in Syracuse. He's got an elite sweeper. It's one of the best moving pitches just in terms of spin rate in the entire in all of baseball, to be honest. His fastball has been really good. He attacks the strike zone. He throws strikes. He gets a lot of soft contact on the ground. And he's another guy where I think he can definitely be a piece where if the New York Mets need a guy, he can pretty consistently get you 5, 6. He's even gone 7 innings in one of his previous starts this season. I'm not sure if right away he'll be able to give you that in the big leagues, but he does have that stuff where you get ahead in the count. What you're looking for is in a major league lineup, you got all these guys who can foul away these pitches with 2 strikes and take close pitches out of the zone. You got to have those put away pitches. And I think McLean has done a really, really good job having those put away pitches like the sweeper. He's added a curveball that's looked really nice when he sprinkled that in a lot more over his last couple of starts this season. So I think those 3 guys, Tidwell, Sproat, McLean, are all guys. Tidwell, of course, has already helped the New York Mets, but Sproat and McLean, I really don't think are that far behind. I think they're really, really going to impress some people when they get up there.
Talking with play-by-play voice of the Syracuse Mets. It's our Mets pipeline segment here, talking about what's going on in the minors and how that might affect the major league squad. It's brought to you today by our friends at Cam's Pizzeria. And don't forget to like our video by hitting the little thumbs up in the bottom right-hand corner. And also subscribe to our YouTube channel at MC Show Digital, where you can receive all of our content, including live shows every single week. So go see us at MC Show Digital. All right, Michael, anybody else on that pitching staff outside of the starters worthy of a discussion? I know you're always looking for sharp lefties at the major league level. Are there any good lefties either in the AAA team or maybe even in AA Binghamton that could be somebody that we could see on the New York Mets roster before this all ends?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, like, there's actually a couple of guys who did just spend some time up in the big leagues who are now at the Syracuse roster, like Jose Castillo is one of those guys, and Colin Poche. One guy who hasn't been to the majors yet, but is intriguing, is this Felipe De La Cruz. He's a young left-handed pitcher who has a really good, mid-90s fastball, has a slider that has really impressed. He's just been inconsistent. When he comes in, you could almost expect he's going to either walk a guy or strike out a guy. Doesn't give up a ton of hits, but he started to walk fewer batters. He started to add more strikeouts, and that obviously has been really good to see just in terms of a left-handed arm. Brooks Raley is rehabbing with Syracuse. We saw him over the weekend. He's going to be with Syracuse all throughout the week. He's a guy that, had to have Tommy John surgery, missed pretty much most of last year and obviously the first half of this year. But I think he's a guy, 37 years old, has a ton of major league experience. He hasn't allowed an earned run yet during his major league rehab outings from single A to double A Binghamton all the way up to triple A Syracuse. And he's looked really good. So that's going to be a big arm. That's definitely going to help the New York Mets bullpen coming up here over the next couple of weeks after the All-Star break. And I think a couple other right-handed names that I have to mention. One is Dylan Ross, 24-year-old. Pitched just only one game last year in St. Lucie. He started in Brooklyn, went to Binghamton. Now he's up in Syracuse. This guy could touch 100 miles an hour. He only pitched one game last year because he was dealing with some injuries. Hasn't pitched much in professional baseball until this season. But when you can throw 100 miles an hour and you've got a plus slider, you can add a curveball. That's something that I think has really impressed people. And then there's this Alex Carrillo, who has just been making his AAA debut this year. He was in independent ball last year, but he could throw 95 to 100 miles an hour. And I think you might be sensing a consistent theme where the New York Mets have gone out and they're just signing a ton of guys, whether it's independent baseball or getting them in the major league draft, who could throw 95 to 100 miles an hour. Maybe you're not going to hit on all of them, but when you acquire so many of these guys who can throw so hard, you're bound to hit on some of them, and they're starting to hit on a few guys that have really impressed us here in Syracuse. I'll have to see if there's an updated stat, but I think it was about a month ago, the New York Mets in the minor leagues, their average fastball velocity was the fastest in all of among all the other 30 teams. So the other 29 teams. The Dodgers had been number one, I think, over the last 5 or 6 years. So this was the first time that any other organization had an average fastball velocity that was the highest that wasn't named the Dodgers, and it's been the New York Mets. I have to look to see an updated stat on that one, but given the hard throwers that we've seen here in Syracuse, I have to imagine that the New York Mets are still right up there.
Yeah, so good. Listen, you're seeing right now, you've got an unbelievable mix of major league players, true bona fide major league players, developmental players, and young players on this Syracuse Mets roster. It's been a fascinating year, and I'll end with this, Michael. For people that don't know, the minor leagues now, the way they do it is they play 6-game series, which is interesting. They don't play on Mondays, but they play the rest of the week against the same team, and then they go on to the next opponent. So that's one key difference. And the other key difference is they've split the season into 2 halves now. And while the Syracuse Mets had an okay first half, but not a great one, maybe not up to their standards considering the talent that they had, they are off to a rip-roaring start here in the second half and are actually on the top of how many teams are in the division?
So it's a 20-team international league. So out of all 20 teams, you got a first-place team here in Syracuse. I buried the lead. First place. How about it? That's remarkable. It's still early. There's still a lot of games left to play, but to have a team that's in sole possession of first place now that we're a couple weeks into the second half of the season. It's fun to say.
Yeah, it is fun to say. Michael, as always, man, thanks so much for your time. It's always great. And we'll definitely pipe back into the pipeline with you and manager Dick Scott and your broadcast partner, Jack, as well. Thanks so much for joining us. Welcome to our new digital world, my friend.
Yeah, it's always fun to join you guys digitally. Really appreciate it. Had a fun time.
All right. Again, don't forget to like and subscribe. Subscribe at MC Show Digital. And we'll step aside. Thanks to Boyd Green. Thanks to Michael. We'll say so long for now. We'll see you on the next broadcast.